Hi Heather here from Creative Kiwi. I've put together this video to show how we make our new bag, which is an in the hoop bag using those very cute lace zips that you can get and an optional 3D flower. If you're new to our website, we've had a free design up there probably for about a year now, which is just a very quick in the hoop bag with the lace zip. Now this was for a 5x7 hoop only because I didn't realise that you could get larger zips. I now know you can, so we can, if you're in New Zealand or Australia, you can purchase them online from Echidna. They're 14-inch lace zips. Anywhere else in the world, I'm sure if you Google 14-inch lace zips, you'll be able to get them from there. If you are confident with making in the hoop bags, I have shown in the instructions the point that you can put a normal zip in. This brings me to the next point. This video just shows the steps that we take to make the bag. All the detail is in the instructions. So when you download the design, when you unzip the file, you'll see a PDF there which has got full step-by-step instructions. So this design set includes these 4 hoop sizes, the 5x7, 6x10, 8x12 and a 9x14. And you have an option of the 3D flower on the front, and you can have a quilted back, and you can have a contrast band. So there's a couple of options involved in the actual design. This video I'll show the whole lot, basically quilted back, 3D flower and the contrast band. The materials you'll need, if you're having the flower, you'll just need a piece of front and back of the fabric. For the bag, obviously you need the zip. I used a very thin fusible fleece actually, so just a thin pellin. Now just depending on what you're doing, you may not even need pellin. So for the front and back of the bag, there's a small bit at the top that you need, contrast band, and then lining, 2 pieces. As I say, this is all in the instructions. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing is, if you're making the optional flower or having a quilted back, you need to do these first. So in the video I'll start with the flower. Now because it is 3D, we want to use water soluble stabilizer, 2 layers, and it's the fabric type stabilizer, and this is so we can remove all traces of the stabilizer from the edges. The bag you can use tear away or cut away, but the flowers is definitely this water soluble. Then you make both flowers in one hooping. When I do my hooping for my designs, I always use 2 layers, and I use the pinning method just to make sure that there's no movement in the hoop. So here we go, making the flower. So the first outline is just on the stabilizer, and it stitches the 2 flowers. I've used a thin batting with my flowers. If you're using heavy fabric, or if you're at all worried about bulk on your machine, you can just skip this step and just do 2 pieces of fabric. But anyway, I've got, as I say, a thin batting there, so we're just doing the second colour, just stitches out on the batting, and it stitches a little circle there. You'll see what that's for later. Now we take the hoop away from the machine, and then we're just going to, using sharp scissors, cut away the batting. Now there is a step here. You can see I'm just cutting away the centre of those flowers, and that's just basically to remove all the bulk, so that when you join your flowers to the bag, there is actually no pellin in there. Now because the flowers are reversible, you can at this point take your flower fabric and you can tape it onto the back of the hoop. Or like I do, I think we'll see in a moment, because of the stabilizer you can see underneath your hoop, so I just put, I float my backing fabric underneath, and that's the wrong side is facing the hoop. Then on the front of the hoop we just put our main flower fabric, and that's just going to stitch around both flowers just twice so you put a nice cutting edge. So the next step is to remove the hoop from the machine again and get those sharp scissors out again and cut away the fabric on the front and the back of the design. And as you can see there, I use a couple of different scissors. I've got the ones showing there are the duckbill applique scissors from Echidna. They're awesome, but sometimes I just use my ordinary dressmaker's scissors. I keep saying it, the best scissors to use are the sharp ones. Now we take the hoop back to the machine. You can put in matching bobbin thread, just because you will see the back slightly. And it's just going to zigzag around the edges and do that nice satin stitch edge. And by the magic of video, there we go, they are finished. Then we just remove the design from the hoop and cut away all the excess stabiliser. We are going to use water at the end to remove the stabiliser completely, but at the moment you just need to cut away the excess so that you can get them ready to put onto the bag. Just so you can see, you need to cut out the hole in the middle. Same idea as before, this is just so we can reduce bulk, and also the hole in the middle allows you to see the placement lines for the bag, so it's a bit fiddly, but it's well worth doing this at the end. The next step is if you want to do the optional back, really super quick, and it does look really very nice. Again, because it's the bag, you're going to be hooping just either a tear away or a cut away, stitching the outline, using batting, and once again, if you've got using vinyl or a heavy fabric, you may not need to use the batting. I just like it because it makes the quilting look so nice. So you're attaching the batting, and just this extra step of removing the hoop from the machine, cutting away the excess batting just to keep it all away from the seams. So once you've done that, you just put the hoop back onto the machine and put your back fabric over the top, and that's just going to attach the fabric and go straight into the quilting and then complete it. So really quite well worth doing. So one last step with that back is obviously removed from the hoop, and then just cut away that excess stabiliser. Just do all we can to make sure that there's less bulk for your machine. So that's the back done. Simple. You can set the back aside now to use later on when we do the front, which we're on to now. So the same thing again, you're hooping either your cutaway or your tear away. The first first stitch, is the outline. Now this stitch is the zip placement, and I mentioned it before, if you're confident with hitting the hoop bags, you could put the zips in place now, so if you're using a normal zip. But otherwise, for this design, what we're going to do here is we're just attaching the lining. So it's kind of a stitch and flip method I think you'd use. So we're putting the lining on the back of the hoop. You can see once we've completed the front, it's going to fold back down over the base of the bag. But just at the moment, we're just going to stitch along that bottom line. Right side of fabric is facing the hoop, and we're just going to tape it in place. We're just basically attaching it at this point and just keeping it out of the way while we do the front of the bag. So that's the back of the hoop. Now what I do here, I just pin it, just keeping it away from the hoop. Now we're going to do the actual, that's the front of the bag. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to stitch and flip. So we're putting the right side of the fabric towards the hoop. We're covering the same line. You see we've got that back in the machine and we're just stitching it down. So that just attaches the lining and the front of the bag. We're going to put a piece of Pellin in. If you've got bulky material or you're using vinyl, skip this step. Tape in place. I'm trying to be better at putting taping, showing tape on when you're doing designs. I must admit I'm not so good at it. I do on all the big hoops in case of movement, but on the 5x7s and 4x4 I normally just place them there. But anyway, we've got the tape down. So as before, we just take the hoop away from the machine and just cutting the batting away. You can see there I'm changing my scissors. I interchange depending on how I feel. Now we're folding that front of the bag back, so it just gives you that nice edge on the top, no raw edges. And there I am taping, I'm quite proud of myself. The next step is just going to attach that bottom of the bag. Just hold it all down. Now we've done the quilting on the front. If you don't want it to be quilted, you can skip this step. Now you can leave it like that if you like. One of my samples I used vinyl and I just left just the quilting. But if you want the contrast band, the next step will stitch an outline, a placement line for you. You place your contrast fabric right side facing the hoop. Stitch it down, and then we fold it back, give it a bit of a finger press. And the next step just attaches that fabric. We've got a optional quilting line on that. Again, you can skip it if you don't want the quilting line. And this is where you could put, if you've got software, you can put a name on there, you could do all sorts of things. The step I'm just showing there, you'll just see that's actually the placement line for the flower. So obviously, if you're not having a flower, don't stitch it. So we've removed the hoop from the machine. And we're getting the flower. So we've got the two pieces, we've just placed them together how we like them. And you can see there's actually a cross right in the middle of that flower. So that's what we're actually lining up. It's really hard to see on the video, but you're lining up the centre of the cross. We're definitely going to tape in place at this point. Now it's just stitches right around that little centre circle. So as long as you tape outside of that circle, you're fine. Now we put that all in the machine, and this is definitely one of those times, don't step away from the machine, just watch it while you're stitching this piece. If you want, you can slow your machine down a bit. We've removed a lot of bulk, so while it looks quite bulky there, there's actually, you're really only attaching two pieces of fabric. So it's just going to stitch around the one time. So have a look, make sure you're happy with the placement, so you've got the flower centered as much as you can. And now we're just going to put the flower center in. And I was very good, I taped it again. So we're going to stitch the next colour, which is just the circle that attaches your flower, the petal inside fabric, and that stitches around twice, just to give you a nice cutting edge. I'm sure you know the next step, which is just take your hoop away from the machine and just cut away the excess fabric around that petal. Okay, so we're back at the machine and we're just going to do the satin stitch edge. As I say, it's definitely not a time to step away from the machine. Just keep an eye on it while it stitches. Next step will be to actually fold the lining back. So if you were going to put any words on, initials, anything like that, do that now before you put the lining back. And then just tape in place. That's going to be what you see inside the purse, so it's all nice and neat. Now we're going to do just that top little edge of the bag. So you've got your small piece from your materials list. We're just going to stitch it along that second from the top line. You can see there, you just place it over that line. You've got about a quarter of an inch seam allowance. The same method as we've done before in this design, you just stitch it down, then flip it up to give you a nice neat edge. And you could remove your hoop from the machine to do this, but you can see I just do it at the machine. And that next stitch is just going to hold down that small part of the top of the bag. Okay, so the front of the bag's finished, and now is the exciting part, adding the zip. So just for the 5x7 size, you may need to do as I've done here, just tape the flower just away from that zip edge. So we get our zip, and the main thing is to make sure that our stitch line is not going anywhere near those metal bits. So the 5x7 bag is the small small zip size, and you can see there the stitch line is actually outside of both of the metal bits. With the bigger bags, you're obviously using the 14-inch zip, which you cut back accordingly. But the main thing is from this point of view, the left-hand side, make sure the metal zips away from the edge. Now you're placing the zip, you can see the center line on the stabilizer, and you're just going to place that zip as best as you can along those lines, ensuring that zips away from that stitch line on the stabilizer. I definitely use tape for my zips. Okay, we're back at the machine, and what we're going to do is we're going to stitch down from this point of view the right hand side, the one closest to the top of the bag. Now I don't like stitching over the tape, so I stop. Completely personal preference. And what's going to happen is it's going to stitch down the zip once, and if you're happy with that, then you just do the next colour, which stitches back along the same stitch line. It just gives the holds the zip down obviously better, but it does give you a little bit of a chance to make sure you have got the zip straight. I haven't shown that on the video, I'm not quite sure why. Anyway, so then I was happy with my zip, so now I'm going down the left hand side, and once again it stitches down. You get a chance to have a look and make sure that it is okay. And if you're happy, you just press the button again and it will just re-stitch down that same stitch line. And that's it pretty much. We've just got to put the back of the bag on, and it's nearly finished. you can see the stitch line of the outline of the bag. You can take this, remove your hoop from the machine and line this up. If you've got a plain back, it's just a plain bit of fabric, so you've got nothing to worry about lining up. If you're using a quilted back like my version here, your matching stitch line. Do not do what I do. You should take this hoop off the machine and match it up there and tape it, but I didn't. Anyway, the first stitch is just going to stitch along that edge. Now, you've got an opportunity here. You can have a look, make sure that, particularly if you've got the back, that it's stitched how you want it. And last chance to open your zip. Very, very important. If you do not open your zip, you will not be able to open your bag. Your hoop from the machine to do this part. Again, I've done it all at the hoop, which is basically probably self-explanatory. You're just taping the back down so it doesn't move when you stitch. And we've got the second to last stitch, which is going to stitch just around that bottom edge. I'm pretty much done. The last step is where we just add the lining. Now, I just float my lining under the hoop, and I did it the wrong way. So don't do what I did. What you do is you have the right side of the fabric facing the hoop. Again, you can take your hoop off the machine to do this and tape it in place. As you can see there, I can see underneath, so I just prefer to float. It's just a personal preference, but I did do it wrong at this point. But anyway, the last stitch is just going to stitch around that whole bag and leave just a gap for turning. It does stitch around twice. And that's it, that's your bag done. All we need to do now is take the design away from the hoop, remove all our excess stabilizers. Here we go. So I'm just initially cutting away just all that excess just to get it out of the way. Where the gap is, just cut, leave it a little bit longer. So you can see I'm just cutting those sides just a little bit longer. Now, I clip the corners and triangles on the edge and just around that curve, just do normal clipping. Now we just need to do the first turn. And it's always at this point, if you've never made a lined bag like this, you look at it and think, oh my goodness, what have they done? But it's all good. So what you'll see there is the zip. And the fact that I've got the lining on the wrong way, just ignore that please. I get my handy, it's a pencil. I use a pencil to just poke out those curves. Now use your iron, which is your best friend, and just iron those two extra edges inside. Now you can sew this, or I'm just showing you how I use double-sided tape, and it's quite funny because it is very sticky. So it's a wee bit fiddly, but really brilliant. Now I couldn't get the tape off, so I just use, I don't know, a hack, I don't know what you call it. You just score it with a pin, and that enables you to get the backing of the tape off eventually. No, it's great stuff. Now this is in the very bottom of the bag, so obviously depending on what you're using it for, if it's going to be for sale or something, you might want to slip stitch that closed. If it's just for you, just use maybe like this double-sided tape which closes it, and you'll never see it. It's just so sticky. I cannot stress enough though, please use your iron when you're doing these bags. It makes everything look neater. So now we just need to remove the piece of stabiliser by the zip. Now if you've used tear away, fine, just tear that piece away, otherwise cut away. Be very careful, you can cut the zip, I have done it many times. It's where these echidna scissors are really good, because they've got that edge, you can't cut things. But yeah, you're just cutting away the stabiliser so that you can get to your zip. It's always about this point when I'm making bags that I think to myself, why do I not use tear away? Because it certainly would make this part of the project easier. It's just I don't actually have any tear away. I keep meaning to order it, but I use cutaway and water soluble for pretty much everything. So yeah, I just don't have any tear away to do. Anyway, getting to the end, we've got that cut away. And I know, sorry, with the black zip it's quite hard to see, but the zip is open, and that gives you your turning gap. And you turn your bag and it comes to the right side. And you feel a lot happier. Again, I cannot stress, poke your corners out and use an iron. Now if you've done the optional 3D flower, you've just got one more step to do, which as you can see here is just using some hot water and a Q-tip and just remove all traces of that water soluble stabiliser. And now you have a really cute bag with a wee 3D flower. So I've got a couple of samples to show. There's the bag we just made with the 3D flower and the quilted back 5x7 size. This is another 5x7. We just did a plain back, really quick to make. That design size is the 8x10, and that was just done in the tone on tone. And then my favourite, the 9x14. So once again, just quilted with the 3D flower. I've also got a picture of just a really quick one I did in vinyl. So I've actually included the instructions in the instruction sheets. Really simple because there's no batting, and if you didn't want quilting on it, it would be really, really quick. And then lastly, we've just got the size comparison. So plenty of versatility in the design set. You can choose which ones you want. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.